the survivors of the genocide criticize the agreement. Tonight, we will get the chance to listen to the descendants of the genocide survivors, learn more about the reasons for the criticism, and learn more about the recommendations on what should be done differently. The speakers tonight will be Joyce Roos, Sima Luipet, Joyce Muzengra, and most probably Boni Kandurosu. Sima Luipet and Joyce Roos are part of the Nama Traditional Authority Genocide Technical Committee. Joyce Muzengra is the vice chairperson of the Herero Genocide Foundation, and Boni Kandurosu is a direct descendant of the Herero survivors who lives in South Africa and will tell us about how the diaspora is affected. The Herero Genocide Foundation is an organization dedicated to the memory of the Herero people who were murdered from 1904 till 1908 and the achievement for justice for the descendants. This online event is part of an event series which will be discussing different topics regarding the genocide against the Herero and the Nama. Tonight's event is divided into 4 sections. So each speaker will have a 15-minute time slot to present. And in the end of the event, there will be another 15 minutes time slot for Q&A. So to the audience, please feel free to post any of your questions in the chat room of this Zoom link. And we will then ask them to the speakers at the end of the event. So Doris, if you're ready, I would give the floor to you. And Doris Roos will actually tell us about the historical background of the genocide and introduce us to the post-independence developments in Namibia.
Okay, thank you very much, Naja. I'm going to be talking about the, I will be talking about the history of the genocide and what led up to events that led up to the genocide. Now, prior to the genocide, the Herero sovereign polities of Herero line comprised a federation of Herero, Banderu, Himba, and other Herero-speaking Bantu people whose ancestral lands cover the central highlands of modern-day Namibia. They were governed by chiefs and at times a paramount chief. The Nama sovereign polities of Great Namaqualand included several Nama tribes. If we can look to the next slide. Yes. So they comprised a confederation of Khoikhoi people, the Nama, whose ancestral lands covers much of southern and some of northern Namibia, who were governed by chiefs, and gaups and captains, and subject to the supremacy of the customary Namakwa law. The Nama polities belonged to a confederation established under the treaties of Waganas of 1858, which guaranteed the unity and equality of the Nama clans and people who numbered over 20,000 by the late 19th century. The Herero and Nama traditional authorities today are corporate successors to the tribal authorities that ruled Namibia over 100 years ago. Next slide. By the 1870s, most of the Herero and Nama polities and chiefs had established friendly diplomatic relations with the UK through English Commissioner Palgrave. They promised Queen Victoria that they would protect the dozens of English traders living and traveling in Herero land and in Great Namaqualand. The English traders included those living since the 1850s and also a few dozen Methodist and Anglican preachers of the London and Wesleyan missionary societies. Next slide, please. German Rhenish missionaries began living and preaching in Herero land and Great Namaqualand in the 1830s. Upon the birth of the German Empire in 1871, a pre-colonial movement was sparked in the German industrial, academic, and political classes. Germany sponsored 5 investigative trips to Africa in the 1870s to seek opportunities for commercial exploitation and find, in the words of Chancellor Bülow, its place in the sun. Now in May, on the 1st of May, 1883, through the influence of the Rhenish missionaries at Bethany, Chief Joseph Friedrichs of the Batavian Nama sold to German trader Adolf Luderitz the coastal rights from the Orange River to Ngamenguis, which was later renamed Luderitz Bay and which is still known as Luderitz today. Next slide. Now the sale of Luderitz was protested through Commissioner Palgrave by Paramount Chief Herero, who petitioned the English government to intercede and prevent Germany's unilateral and unrequested protection. The British declined and accepted Germany's claim over Luderitz. They later declared they would protect all territory from the Orange River to the Kunene River, which form the southern and northern borders of Namibia. Paramount Chief Herero refused to accept this and immediately petitioned for relief from the Aborigines Protection Society, an international NGO that was based in London that advocated for the rights of indigenous people. Next slide. Now, if you look at from 1884 to 1903, from November 15, 1884 to February 26, we all know Germany hosted the Berlin West African Conference. Following the conference where Africa was sliced up like a piece of cake, Germany dispatched Imperial Commissioner Dr. Heinrich Ernst Göring to negotiate and conclude protection treaties. The German government signed 14 treaties with the Herero and Nama polities. These treaties, often referred to as the protection treaties, invoking the international law construct of protectorate, contains promises that were broken and stood for principles that were long forgotten, ignored, and discarded by the German government by the late 1890s. Next slide. So with that, with the treaties that were not respected by the German government, major acts of violence and atrocities started to take place. For example, the first one was in June 1889, when the German officer, Captain Kurt von Francois, said, "Today we burnt Wernkrans to the ground." Chief Hendrik Witbooi later recalled the atrocities of that in detail. Their land was completely burned down and women and children were killed. The second was the Ludwig system, which was a system of, when Ludwig came in, he again had a system of submit or die. Germany replaced von Francois with Tutor Ludwig in the late 1893, in part due to von Francois' failure to defeat Chief Witbooi, who retreated to a defense in the No-Kloof Mountains after Francois raised Wernkrans. Ludwig's policies were divide and conquer. Germany expanded its influence by seizing land of uncooperative tribes and clans, enslaving tribe members, including women and children, as forced laborers, and introducing a system of private privatized violence in the form of flocking as a form of punishment. Far beyond divide and conquer, Ludwig's system is better described as a policy of submit or die. He arrived in January 1894 with 250 suits troopers as reinforcement. Next slide. The third acts of major violence and atrocities were the fraudulent lending and eviction at gunpoint. The German government erected and supported a system of fraudulent lending practices by German colonial companies, banks, and land speculators, as well as the German colonial authorities that supported the actions and evicted over Herero and Nama families from their lands at gunpoint. The fourth form of violence was privatized violence. For over a decade, flocking was unregulated and treated as an absolute right of a white employer vis-a-vis African employees under the substantive theory of breach of contract and the procedural remedial theory of the fatherly right of punishment. Under German colonial law, as implemented and practiced, breach of contract was punishable by flocking, and even minor offenses were reported and punished. Next slide, which is the last slide. Just to give you an example of, here we have the names of the offenders, the offenses, and the types of punishment that was meted out. And all these things are recorded and can be found in museums. We have the name of one of the offenders, but look at the type of offenses. He went to Otavi Fontaine without permission and had to receive 25 lashes by Shambok. Another one was stole corn, the corn on the cob that we get, 25 lashes each by Shambok, plus 1 month forced labor in chains for stealing corn. Another one was labeled continued laziness at work, 25 lashes by Shambok, 9 days in chains. Another one was received 15 lashes each by beach for littering on the beach. And the last one received 10 lashes for speaking freshly to a police officer. I don't even understand the meaning of freshly. I don't know what they meant with speaking freshly to a police officer, but maybe being confident, assertively talking to a police officer. Maybe he made eye contact when he talked to a police officer, but for that, he received 10 lashes. So these were some of the atrocities that the Nama and the Herero had to go through for those petty offenses. And these were all the atrocities that eventually led up to the genocide that took place from 1904 to 1908. So I think that's the last slide that I had. So thank you very much. Thank you. The last slide.
All right, thank you so much, Joyce, for explaining the historical background. As Boni Kanderoso could unfortunately not make it today, we will now proceed to Joyce Muzengra. As I have mentioned before, she is the vice chairperson of the Herero Genocide Foundation. And tonight she will unpack the actual content of the current agreement between Namibia and Germany for us. Joyce, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, everybody. As introduced, I am Joyce. My light doesn't seem very good. I don't think I can be seen, so let me just cut the video. It's fine.
Crushed.
Bonnie trying to come in?
Okay.
Sorry, Joyce. Sorry, Chairperson. I've got a problem with my laptop, so I've just joined in on my cell phone. I won't be able to present with the slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in, Bonnie. So maybe let's have Joyce present for now, and then you will join in afterwards and present without the slides. Okay.
Thank you.
All
okay,
right.
Thank you.
A good evening to everybody, to the hosts and everyone. Naja, would you, or maybe let me just, I will share my slides in the inbox, right? So tonight we are going to look at the agreement that was, at this stage, there was a defense from the people within the Namibian negotiations team that it is not an agreement yet. It is just a declaration, but it seems like it is an agreement that leaked, or most of the content is probably derived from the agreement that both states were soon going to sign after going through the channels, going through the legislature and stuff. But the team from Namibia, of course, came in defense and said that it is not an agreement, nothing was signed, it is just a joint declaration. So they're trying to play with the semantics really, but we know what is happening. So a short overview of the presentation. Of course, we are going to look at the process, how it came about, and where this agreement emanated from. And then we are going to look at the philological imprecision, or the semantics, or the language used within this agreement or this declaration. And then we are, of course, going to examine the quantum a little bit. And then we are going to look at the synergy between the quantum and restorative justice, whether there's some sort of synergy between the two. Of course, when one speaks of reparations, one has to sort of try and bring the victim to a point where they could have been had the harm not perpetrated, or had whatever harm caused to them not happened. So we are going to just look at those 4 points within this joint declaration by the two states. Now, when you look at the process from which this declaration emanated, this declaration, or the negotiations process rather, was birthed, or what it emanated from a motion that was tabled by the late Paramount Chief Kwaima Rirwako, who is the third Paramount Chief, or let me say he is basically the first Paramount Chief post-colonialism in independent Namibia, who tabled, and he was also the president of the Nudo political party, which mainly has an electorate of the people of the Herero people. Now, this motion stipulated the following: that Germany shall issue an unconditional apology to the affected communities for the genocide that was committed in 1983 and in 1904 to 1908. Now, a genocide was initially committed to the Witbooi clan in 1893 in Hornkrans. And this is part of the history that is also not really known much, but the very first extermination order was issued in 1893 on the 12th of April at Hornkrans, where Ludwig Francois wanted to exterminate the entire Witbooi clan of the Nama communities. And so the second extermination order, of course, was issued on the 2nd of October in 1904 to exterminate the entire Herero peoples, and subsequently in 1905 that of the Nama communities. So now the second point or on the motion that was tabled by the late Paramount Chief was that the Namibian government shall undertake the role of a mediator between the German government and the affected communities, and it will facilitate with the process of reconciliation. And so the third point, or the third demand on this motion, was that the affected communities shall represent themselves in this process of these negotiations. So those are basically the three pillars that were the driving force behind the negotiation, that was supposed to be the driving force behind the ongoing erroneous negotiations process that today emanated this agreement or this joint declaration today. And even with from 2006 onwards, of course, in 2008 we had that is, I think, the first time that the Germans and the Namibian government sort of deviated from this motion. And now, mind you, in 2006, the Minister of International Relations at that time, who was Honorable Utoni Nuyoma, gave a reply and acknowledged these points. And of course, the Parliament of Namibia then resoluted to adopt this motion in Parliament. But from 2008 onwards, the Namibian government deviated and they came up with the German, and with the German government, they came up with the German Initiative Program. And again, the process was subsequently hijacked by, later hijacked by the executive, and the negotiations process was elevated on a bilateral level, which excluded the affected communities or the authentic authorities or the authentic representatives of the affected communities. And so when it was elevated on bilateral level, the executive wanted to use the leadership of the affected communities as advisories and basically put them on the backbench, which again is a deviation from the three pillars on which these negotiations were supposed to be based on, and which the legislative branch of Namibia adopted. And that the affected communities shall represent themselves within the process of these negotiations. So the executive of Namibia hijacked this process, and it was then elevated on bilateral level between the two states. So of course the authorities then disassociated themselves from this process, and they left the two states to run with it. And of course the two states, the Namibian government then went around, found a few people that it could bribe and so on, and it brought these people, and today it tells the world that the affected communities are on board, which of course the affected communities made clear. Both our leaders, Chief Isaac and the late Paramount Chief, Victor Okoro, went on international media and of course made it clear that no, we are not on board with this declaration. So that was just a short historical context from where this declaration comes from before we dive into this dubious declaration here. Now, when we are looking at this declaration, part of the things that one will immediately spot is the semantics that are used within this declaration. When you look at paragraph 2 of the declaration, of the introduction of this declaration, it says that it is mindful of the deep wounds that were inflicted. It is mindful of the deep wounds that were inflicted on the particular communities and other peoples of Namibia by the atrocities perpetrated during the German colonial rule between 1904 and 1908, with the echo through the time and are still felt by the Namibians today. Now, when one looks at these semantics, the most important term here that defines this historical event from the date that it was perpetrated till today, the genocide. It is barely mentioned within this document. From the onset, from paragraph 2 until the end of this document, the agreement only speaks of atrocities that were committed, the harm that was committed, or the pain that was inflicted upon these communities. But it does not necessarily define it or outlines it as a genocide, because it is a genocide that happened. We are talking about a genocide, but this document really only speaks about, atrocities, and the term genocide was only mentioned once, which one can describe as that, this document here is not genuine, and the whatever is supposed to happen, or the reparations that they want to talk about, these are not necessarily, it is not a genuine document. Maybe let me just say that and leave that, and then as we go on. Secondly, the document does not speak of reparations. It outlines the historical context, and it talks about the harm that was inflicted, and it says that it acknowledges the genocide according to the UN Convention, but it does not speak of reparations whatsoever. Although it speaks of projects that are going to be implemented within the 7 regions that the affected communities are majority, or that are currently inhabiting, but it does not necessarily speak of the reparations, which today, part of the struggle, or part of the restorative justice that the affected communities expect from Germany today, are reparations. And the reparations today are the bone of contention. So Germany went out there and told the entire world that, no, we are going to apologize to the Namibian government for the genocide committed. But within this, the document that is supposed to bind them to the events that they are, or to what is going to happen, as a gesture, am I audible? Naja?
I can hear you. Yes, I think you should be audible.
Oh, okay. My Wi-Fi here seems to be going on and off, on and off. I don't know if was there any maybe cutting or so, or was I just audible throughout the presentation?
You were perfectly audible to me. However,
okay.
If someone had issues hearing Joyce's presentation, please do let us know. But just go on. I think it's fine.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you. So, of course, we when you look at as we go on with the semantics, when you look at the language that is used within this declaration, it sort of conceals the true intentions of the two states to completely of not repairing whatsoever the affected communities, but to just conceal the true intention. And one questions the intentions of this declaration. Is it just to shut the affected communities? Is it to sort of contain them and stop them from going on with demanding for reparations? Or is it one would have a lot of questions regarding this declaration here. But of course, moving on, even when one looks at the historical context, or the historical context that is stated within this document here, the history is skewed, it is distorted. It states that Germany waged a war, but it was not a war. Germany basically had the intention to exterminate these people. Upon the arrival of Lothar von Trotha, who we in Namibia here, of course, gave him a nickname of the weapon of destruction. His agenda, or his mandate when he came here, was to subdue the affected communities completely, so that there is room for the German settlers or the German natives to sort of get access to the land and to the resources of the native communities. But the agreement jumps around or goes around the bush when it is stating these things. But of course, as it goes on, it completely states out what happened. It brings in the concentration camps. It talks about all these things. But when one looks at the remedial effects, or when one looks at the contrition that Germany apparently showed, the remedial measures that Germany took to pay or to sort of, to pay for this genocide that was committed does not necessarily address the issues or the harm that was caused by Germany to the affected communities. The projects do not redress the harm that was caused. The projects do not redress the psychological impact that was perpetrated on the affected communities. It does not address the economical impact that was perpetrated on the affected communities, and it does not necessarily redress the land or address the land question that today is a big bone of contention, even in Namibia. So when one looks at this, at the issues that were perpetrated on the affected communities today, and when one looks at how Germany wants to address these issues, there is really no synergy between the two issues. Now, the other bone or the other elephant in the room when it comes to the affected, or when it comes to this declaration here, is the quantum. Like I said, the quantum does not necessarily address the devastating issues or the devastating things that were done to these affected communities. The quantum is far from redressing the affected communities. The 1.1 billion or the 18 Namibian, the 1.1 billion euros equates to 18 billion in Namibian dollars. Now, when one looks at the agricultural sector of Namibia today, the affected communities won't even be able to tap into the agricultural sector, because the agricultural sector alone of Namibia equals to at least 40 billion Namibian dollars. Now, that is just one part of what should be redressed when it comes to the affected communities. You have the agricultural sector, you have the psychological part, you have the land question, you have the even just the developmental aspect of it alone. So the 18 billion in Namibia is an amount that we actually have within the Namibian economy, because our economy alone is worth more than that. So if Germany wanted to actually address this question of reparations, or address the harm that it has done or that it has perpetrated on the affected communities, Germany would have looked at an amount or a quantum that will actually repay and bring the affected communities at a place where they could have been had the genocide not happened in the country. And of course, we know that part of the reason why, even within this amount here, part of the reason why the amount that is supposed to acquire or restitute the affected communities, why it was made so small, is because we know that part of the biggest chunk of land in Namibia is still in the hands of the German communities. So the quantum does not really, the quantum in fact really is an insult. It is an insult. It does not, it will not solve anything whatsoever. And of course, there were questions arising from the people on the ground that why does it have to take German money to come and to sort of be, why does it have to take German money to develop our lands or to develop the lands where the affected communities inhabit today, if what the quantum is being directed to is what the Namibian taxes or what the Namibian taxes ought to do. The quantum looks at building schools, being diverted to part of the educational sectors, like the vocational education and all these things that the Namibian government is supposed to do. When we are talking about the question of reparations, we want the person, the affected person, as an individual and also as a whole to be redressed, for this person to be reparated. We are talking about, we want more than what this quantum here or what this amount here is going to be diverted to. We want more than that. And of course, it is clear that the affected communities' authentic representatives were not consulted, because this is just part of what the affected communities need at this point in time. It is not only what the affected communities want. This was discussed on bilateral level, and the person that is spearheading the person that is spearheading these negotiations is not even somebody from the affected communities. The special envoy is basically just a face, but the person that is spearheading these negotiations was not necessarily somebody from the affected communities or from the authorities or within the leadership of the affected communities. And even the person that was chosen and the consultations that were apparently done did not necessarily consult the authorities of the affected communities. And that is why the entire process just deviated. The entire process was just flawed and really does not address the needs of the affected communities whatsoever. So I think in short, let me just end there and answer the questions as they come. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for your great presentation. We will now proceed and give the word to Katuwasa Boni Kandarosu. He is a direct descendant of the Herero survivors and lives in South Africa. He will tell us more about the situation of the diaspora and how the diaspora communities today are still affected. Okay, Boni, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow global citizens. Good evening again. Thank you, Naja, for inviting us in this one of the historic conversation about the people in diaspora. My name is Katuwasa Boni Kandarosu. I was born and bred in South Africa. I'm the second generation of the people who survived the genocide of 1904 and 1908. My discussion will start only life in diaspora, which at the time people fled their mother country through the desert. Some walked, some tried to, all means of transport. That time was no transport. People were walking or maybe using donkeys or maybe on horseback until they arrived in South Africa through three different entry points. The one through Botswana into South Africa, the one through Kuruman, and the other entrance being through Appington and those areas there. Remember, at that time, there was no border gates. People used to walk through. There was no means of access control or of any sort. The border gate, I think those who know, it started in 1962. The Odendaal Commission is when they started demarcating those border gates. By the way, in that 1962, I was already born in South Africa. I just want to talk about the life in diaspora as a foreigner, without even knowing that you are a foreigner, growing up in a country that you thought maybe you belong, but only find out that the treatment is not the same in many ways. What happened in 1904? People arrived in 1907. People were given some farms around Transvaal. Many came with their flocks, cattle, and so on. They got some refugee. That time, South Africa was still a colony of England. And then afterwards, things went worse when the South African government took over. They started demarcating the farms according to the families. And they started realizing that this family of people who came from Namibia cannot stay in the same farms. They must not recuperate and maybe start another revolution in South Africa. But fast forward, I would like only to mention that at that time, people could not stay in a country without maybe giving some kind of maybe assisting in doing or building the country. At the time, that's at the flock of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, the mines, 40 men were taken to the mines to work in the mine. The conditions there at the mines was so severe that many of them couldn't even return. They died there. Some of them, they had this asbestosis ailments, which, by the way, they were never even compensated, because the asbestos kind of related ailments is to do with, sometimes is over the years. Some people were returned and then they died silently at their homestead without even knowing what is it that was killing them. But on the same breath, the paramount chief at the time, Samuel Herero, came to South Africa to come and visit and see where the people are. And then he was told that 40 men were taken to the mines in Johannesburg, and some were married men, but now they were not coming home because there was no means of transport at the time. So he had to try to find out how can he get those men there at the mines. And then the women as well were starting to revolt against the situation of their husband leaving them in the Transvaal, going to the mines there. Some of them went there. As they got there, the women now, they got abused. They were assaulted in many ways that sometimes they don't even be good to even mention here. Some of them, they bore children with the white people, of which at that time they were not allowed. They have to run away after realizing that they have conceived a white child, trying to run over to other countries. But in a nutshell, again, we have found that even those who had flocks, they were limited to, if ever you've got goats, they were limited only to 4 goats. And then if you've got cows, they were limited to not more than 5 cows, of which then those cows will all the time being, monitored, that you must not have a lot of cows in the farms of the white settlers at the time. And then when we got born at the time when we thought that maybe things were getting better, only the schools that were provided was the language that you as a foreigner, you cannot even be able to talk in vernacular. And then the schools were far. We used to walk barefooted for about to and fro, about 20 kilometers to and fro at the tender age of 7 and 8. And then afterwards we got, to go to the high schools, which were very far from where we were staying. And then even the cost of living was beyond our means because of there was no source of income. People were just staying in the farm and working in the farm. They were paid three months with a sack of mealie meal, with maybe milk that was now maybe being received from the white farmer's kettle. And if ever you don't have someone who can stay in that farm, you were expelled and then to go to the homelands, which at that time we are not allowed to stay at the homelands. And then again, we come to the area where we start schooling now. After having finished with your school, you start competing at the school, at the working environment. You find that the competition was very high. And then as a person who's a foreigner, you were always a second in the row. Even if you are good in the interview, you won't be able to get the job because of now, even in the new dispensation, they will check whether you are a citizen of South Africa, even if you are a citizen, but they will check again with the surnames and all those kind of things. We have found ourselves wandering and then trying to find ourselves way back to Namibia, of which we had a problem now. Still, Namibia was not in Namibia, was Southwest Africa, under the same government that is treating us in South Africa. And it was very difficult. After the independence, we thought things will be better. In 1990, Namibia became independent, go back, they might go back. And then, but you were on your own. How you got back, it was your own. You have to see to it how you go back. And then we try to find out if ever maybe somebody can go back. What kind of life are we going to have there? Where are we going to be residing? Because of already the places that were occupied by our ancestors, our forebearers, was already occupied by the white German settlers. Because Germany actually never left Namibia, only maybe in the documentation it did leave Namibia, but it never left Namibia because the people of Namibia, the descendants of the Germans are still in Namibia. So we started now making contact with the people in Namibia, and then in 2007, just fast forward, 2007, we managed to salvage the paramount chief, Dr. Kwaimari Roko, the late Dr. Kwaimari Roko, may his soul rest in peace, came to visit us, and we started talking to try to find out how can we go back to Namibia. At that time, now we started the negotiation of this genocide, of which we thought that it was being handled properly, only to find that now it was not a genocide that, as per extermination order of 1904 and 1905, with the respectively with the Hereros and the Namas in 1905. Now the negotiation was bilateral, of which we are not included. Even the Hereros in Namibia, we were not part of that negotiations. Only those who wanted to fall under the umbrella of the Namibian government for the Namibian government to talk on their behalf. The problem was that the bilateral talks was not including people in diaspora. Even the people in Namibia, those who were supposed to be sitting on the same table, they were not a part of that, and which in South Africa, we are part of our Herero tribal authority, and then under the OGF umbrella, that's how we liaise. We find ourselves being closed out on the negotiations. We find ourselves having a problem. Even when we want to get a citizenship of Namibia, the process that we have to go through is so, it is not, if I can use the word, it's not conducive. It is a long process that will make you even to take more than 5 trips to 7 trips to go back to Namibia to try to salvage a dual citizenship. In a nutshell, what we want to say is that even in South Africa, the situation of people in diaspora, it is the same as it was under the South African government, because of there are some other things that we cannot be able to access. Even the land that our ancestors were given by the German colonies as a place to stay, those lands have been taken back by the South African government. So we are just like people in a land where they don't have any say, where they don't have access to a lot of other things that a normal citizen could have. And going back to Namibia, we got a problem that, again, we are not regarded as Namibians, even on the talks, bilateral talks itself. We are not part of, they don't see us as part of those talks because of they regard us as citizens of other countries. In a nutshell, what we're saying is that we find ourselves that we are refugees without the status of refugees in South Africa. And when we go back, we want to go back to Namibia, we are finding ourselves as like foreigners again in Namibia until such time that maybe we can be able to sit with the same German government who have brought us this kind of sufferings over the years. We find ourselves still wondering, and then we rely on the OGF, our Herero Genocide Committee, and then the NTLA under the NAMA authority to be able to be recognized and maybe at some stage go back to the land of our ancestors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Boni, for educating us on the situation of the diaspora descendants of the genocide survivors. I will now give the floor to Sima Luipert. She is the Vice Chairperson of the Nama Traditional Authority Genocide Technical Committee, and she will talk us through the claims and demands of the Herero and the Nama regarding the agreement.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much for allowing me to be on this platform. Yes, I think that the previous speakers have given a pretty solid background. I will now speak about, I think all of us know how the genocide has happened. We have spoken a lot about the non-representation during the genocide talks, but I think it is also important for us to really talk about what is it that we are really claiming from Germany? What are the legal claims that we are making to the German government? So that is what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. Let's go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? In order to understand the claims that we are making against Germany, I think we need to understand what it is that Germany took away from us. First, Germany took our land rights. Second, it took our rights in personal property and livestock. Third, it took our concession rights, our tax rights, our customs rights, and it took our rights to our precious metals. Then again, it took our rights to sovereignty. It took our labor rights, the labor rights of our family members. It took the skulls, the flesh, the brains, the hair, and other mortal remains of our family members. And Germany also took the corpses of our family members. So this is what Germany took from us, and this is what we are laying a claim to as our legal right to do so. We can go to the next slide. In terms of land rights, what is the background against which we are claiming our land rights? Land alienation began in 1883 in the South by signing fraudulent protection treaties. This is how the gradual dispossession of land began and also led to the loss of ancestral land. And this was also really the beginning of the replacement of community-owned land with private property and also with rigid land boundaries. What also made the matter a little bit worse is the Rinderpest epidemic of 1897, which wiped out about 90% of the cattle in central and southern parts of pest epidemic of 1897, and did this through unequal trade in land and livestock. So what we saw then was that by 1902, only about 38% of the total land area that used to be owned by the natives remained in the hands of the natives. We will go to the next slide. There were also different regulations that were issued. There was the land expropriation regulations issued in 1905. These regulations meant that all land that belongs to the Nama people is expropriated without compensation. All land that belongs to the Herero people is expropriated without compensation. What also followed is that the German administration gave small reserves totaling about only 1 million hectares to the natives. And also at this point, 90% of adult males in the police zone were in wage employment by 1913. And so we saw that whites owned 90% of all the cattle in the police zone and about 70% of the small livestock right after the genocide happened. This expropriation of land and of property meant that the Nama and the Herero people were also stripped of their political power, of their economic power, and also of their means to resist the colonial powers. Therefore, we as the Nama and Herero people are saying that we are entitled to the revenues that Germany obtained through all these illegal takings plus interest accumulated over the years. This is what we are claiming in terms of our land rights. We will go to the next slide. The second, what we are claiming is our personal property and our livestock. Now, between the years 1984 and 1915, Germany used stolen livestock for its benefit. By 1913, the Germans had about 205,000 head of cattle that was taken from the Nama and the Herero people. What we are arguing, and what is very clear according to the historical records, is that the colonial administration obtained substantial income from the auctions of these properties. The Nama and the Herero people had absolutely no means of claiming compensation. And the German settlers were making substantial savings because they didn't have to make any cash payments to the Nama and the Herero people. Next slide. Next slide. These are just some of the personal property that was taken away. Previous slide. Previous slide. These are just some of the examples of the personal property and livestock that was taken away from our people. With the first ever extermination order that was made in 1893 at Warrenkranz, what you see there on your screen are the personal properties that was taken away. In 1894, the Tchouan and the Bandero uprising occurred, and during this uprising, as a matter of punishment, the German administration took all the horses that belonged to the Tchouan people and the Bandero people. They took all the cattle and they confiscated all the land that belonged to these people. During the revolt of 1897 to 1898, 1,000 small livestock was taken from the Topnar and the Swartboy people. When Captain Nicolas Swart resisted in 1901 and fell in battle, from his people, 60 horses were taken, 500 oxen were taken, and 2,000 small livestock was taken. For the Simon Cooper people, their entire tribe was forced into exile, where they remain with nothing, and the Afrikaner clan lost everything, including land until today. So there were other takings such as our diamonds, our valuable coins, our gold, silver, and so on. So what we are saying in terms of our claims is that the Nama and the Herero people are entitled to all the revenues that were obtained by the German state plus interest. This is what we want to see in the quantum. Next slide. Another claim that we are making is our rights to concessions, to taxation, to customary rights and revenues, and also rights to our precious metals. Germany sold and auctioned concession rights to private companies in return for concession fees. Germany obtained money in selling these rights. Germany also exercised taxation rights and obtained taxation revenue from selling these rights. Germany exercised customs, duties, and tariff rights, and thereby obtained revenues from these rights. By 1914, Germany had sold the entire coast of Namibia, extending 300 miles inwards, and it also issued concession rights to private corporations, of which some are listed in the presentation. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the German Southwest Africa Company claimed ownership to the bottom half of the Namibian coastline, and it also claimed mineral rights in several parts of the country, including the Windhoek area and also the southern parts of Namibia, including Botany. Next slide. Another company is the Kaoko Land and Mining Company, which claimed ownership over the Kaoko Land desert in the northeast, on the northeast coast, and also mineral rights in the northwestern desert. The Southwest Africa Company claimed ownership of about 100 square miles within the limits of, and outside the limits of Otavi, and also mineral rights surrounding the Etosha Park and Etosha Pen and the western stretches of the Omaheke Desert. The South African Territories Limited Company claimed mineral rights in the broader portion of today's southern Great Namakwa Land, which is southern Namibia today. So by 1910, if you read the records, the Colonial Economic Report states that a total revenue of about 14 million Reichsmark was made from exports primarily in ostrich feathers and so on during the time period between 1900 and 1913. We'll go to the next slide. Another company, the Diamond Agency for the Southwest African Protectorate, through a consortium of German banks, they marketed and exported diamonds that were discovered on lands that were taken away from the Nama people, and just between 1908 and 1913, about 4.7 million carats of diamond was exported at a value of about 155 million Reichsmark. Germany received revenues by selling diamond deposit concession rights, by taxing all German-related revenues, and by charging customs, tariffs, and duties. And therefore, we believe that we are entitled to legal claims for all these revenues, including interest. Next slide, please. We are also claiming as our legal right labor and tort rights. By this, we mean that through enslavement, Germany took labor and civil rights of the Herero and Nama peoples to payments for their labor, their pensions, workers' compensation and unemployment compensation, overtime payment and hardship bonuses, and our rights to life and liberty. Now, by taking these property rights, Germany also took our labor claims, it took our claims to wrongful death, and it took other tort claims from the victims and their heirs. And Germany used these property rights to construct valuable railways, government-owned facilities, and docks along the coast of present-day Namibia. Next slide. We are also saying that Germany earned proceeds of sales that went to the German treasury through rental income, by renting out slaves by day and by month, and also by selling the enslaved Herero and Nama peoples to individual German settlers, to private companies, and also to slave traders for domestic labor and export. Germany also received substantial savings from the use of forced and or slave laborers, and therefore we are also asserting property rights to wrongful death claims for the wrongful taking of the lives of the Herero and Nama peoples, and also of depriving the Herero and Nama peoples of a forum for their claims to be heard. We claim back wages, we claim payment of pensions and other labor benefits, and we also claim wrongful death and other tort claims. So we believe that we are entitled to all the revenues plus interest. Next slide. Our next claim is on the taking of body parts and remains. In this case, Germany decapitated about 300, according to the records, 311 of Herero and Nama people. They forced women and children to scrape the faces and the flesh off the boiled heads, and they took the faces, the flesh, and the brains of the natives, and they profited through its scientific and medical research. Therefore, the Nama and the Herero people are entitled to the return of all body parts. We are entitled to an accounting of scientific research, plus the research revenues, plus the interest on those research revenues, and also an accounting of all medical discoveries, academic findings, and the scientific conclusions that were drawn from these pseudo-scientific research and experiments. The next slide. The next slide. Another issue that is very little being spoken about, previous slide. The next issue that is, okay. The next issue that is very little spoken about is the forced deportation of the Nama people. The general attitude during that time was that that was based on pseudo-scientific research done by Paul Robach, is that the Nama people are lazy people and they are work-shy people, and therefore they are doomed for extinction. So Robach found that once the rebellion is over, what will have remained of the Nama people must be deported and shipped to Togo and any other German colony, so that they can diminish from the scene in any near future. So the files that we can see from Imperial Germany show that these deportations were a deliberate plan to destroy the Nama people through official policy. In 1904 of November, 119 Nama people were deported on a Voerman steamship to Togo and Cameroon. The Voerman that we know so broadly in Namibia is certainly connected to these deportations of our people to Togo and Cameroon. Out of the original 119 Nama people that were deported, only 49 were still alive in September of 1905, and in June 1906, only 42 were brought back. So this means that about 2/3 had died after these deportations. Next slide. There are also post-genocide damages that are worth mentioning, and that we believe that we have legal claims to these damages, and which we believe can be quantified in this quantum that we are talking about. Before the closing of the concentration camps, I'm saying closing in inverted commas, because really these concentration camps were not closed. Slave labor camps were open. So people were just moved from these horrific places to places where they could serve as slave labor. So Germany passed the native ordinances in order to further expropriate property. And I'm just going to mention 3 of those native ordinances that were that were made post-genocide. And this was the vagrancy ordinance, which said that any of a Herero or Nama man or woman who was unable to prove the source of his or her livelihood would be punished by either flogging or by imprisonment. Second ordinance was the Husbandry Ordinance, in which the Nama and Herero people were absolutely prohibited from engaging in any farming activity or any animal husbandry activity, so that they could rather use their labor as slaves on the newly expropriated farms or land of the Nama and the Herero people. And of course, there was the Identification Ordinance, where the Nama and the Herero who are of age over 6 had to wear a chain around their necks at all times. These chains had metal discs attached to them with a very unique identification number, so that the authorities could keep track of the movement of these people and also keep track of who their labor was allocated to. So in order to ensure a state of intergenerational poverty and intergenerational servitude, which actually remains until today, I must add, the Nama and the Herero people were confined to reserves where they still remain today. So what we are saying is that Germany destroyed the repositories of our knowledge, of our culture, and our practice. It also interrupted mechanisms through which we can transmit such knowledge and culture and practice, and we are entitled to make claims for these damages. Next slide. What I just want to say in conclusion is that all of these things that I've mentioned now, if you look at the agreement that has been reached between the two governments, an agreement that is hailed as a reparation agreement, it seems to me that the two governments are not even in agreement how to call this agreement, because on the one hand, the Namibian government is saying it is a reparation agreement. On the other hand, the German government is saying it is a reconciliation agreement. We don't know what it is. But all the things that I have mentioned that we as a people are claiming are nowhere to be seen within this agreement. What we are seeing when you read that agreement is that it is a bilateral agreement between two states. It is not an agreement that is addressing the takings that I have just explained. It does not address those takings at all. Germany does not only have a moral responsibility as it claims over and over again. Germany has never actually admitted a legal responsibility. But it continues to deny that it has a legal obligation. But also important to note is that by ratifying the Genocide Convention, Germany committed itself to punishing genocides. Also under international legislation, compensation payments for the horrific crimes are binding to the German state. I'm not even going to talk about the right to self-determination and self-representation, because these in themselves under international law are legal and are guaranteed to the Nama and the Herero people. And just as a final word, I think that the Namibian government, first and foremost, has an obligation to its citizens. The Nama and the Herero people are citizens of Namibia. We are not second-class citizens. We are full citizens of Namibia. We are full citizens that are voting our political parties and governments into power. And therefore, the Namibian government equally has an obligation to us as citizens of this country. And therefore, it must support us in making our rightful claims in order to restore the dignity of its own citizens. Unless, of course, to the Namibian government, the Nama and the Herero people are lesser citizens in Namibia. That would be the only conclusion that I would make if the Namibian government does not support the Nama and the Herero people in its claims that it is making against the German government. The Nama and the Herero people are not in a conflict with the Namibian government. The Nama and Herero people are saying to the German state, a wrong has been done and you need to take responsibility for that wrong, because that wrong has placed us in a position where we are unable to come out of an intergenerational poverty, and poverty in every sense of the word, not only economic poverty, but poverty in every sense of the word. And so Namibian government, help your own citizens so that we as a Namibian society can take this country to greater heights. So that is my presentation for tonight. And yeah, I'm open for questions and comments. Thank you very much, Nadia. That's all from me.
Thank you so much, Sima, and thank you very much to everybody who presented tonight. So as you have already mentioned, the floor is open for questions. So if some people of the audience have questions, you can post them in the chat now. We have already received some questions. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we will be able to ask all the questions because we already exceeded the time frame. However, I will start with one of the questions now. So someone is asking, how do you advocate for those in the diaspora? Do you have contact with them, and how do you reach out to hear their narrative to enhance your advocacy? The person mentions Botswana, South Africa, Togo, and Cameroon, and gives as a reason that the envisaged agreement between the two governments does not mention the diaspora at all. Bonnie, perhaps you would like to answer the question?
May I come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Joyce.
All right. Part of the reasons why we reject this agreement, or part of the reasons why the authentic representatives or the leaders of the affected communities, why they pulled out of these negotiations, was because the question of the people in the diaspora was not addressed. And also because the people in the diaspora are not included within the negotiations process. Now, it is imperative to have the people in the diaspora included at all levels, because they are the reason why they're in the diaspora today is not willfully, but this was because of a forced dislocation as a consequence of this genocide. It is part of the dire consequences that the affected communities had to suffer because of this genocide. So really, the part of the reasons why we are not part of these negotiations today is because even the projects that they are supposedly rewarding, or that they are supposedly replacing the reparations whatsoever, are only targeted on the regions where the affected communities today live, which is only in Namibia, and completely excludes the people within the diaspora. And that is why, of course, we also called for us ourselves to represent ourselves within the negotiations process, because then at least that will have room for the people within the diaspora to represent themselves and voice themselves within the negotiations process. So we do advocate for the people in the diaspora very much, and we are all in close relations, and we communicate on a daily basis. And part of them are also within the leadership of the Herero Genocide Foundation, which is of course based in Namibia, but we have people in the diaspora that are also part of the leadership. So we are in close relations, we are in close communication, and the leadership in Namibia also take trips to these countries, and we are in communication with these people. And the leadership in Namibia, the paramount chief that is chosen, usually leads every Herero people from the Herero side. It leads them all, even including those in the diaspora. So we vehemently advocate for our brothers and sisters within the diaspora. I think I will end there, and then Bonnie and everybody else can add on whatever I missed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for answering the question. Is there anyone else who would like to come in? Bonnie, I think you raised your hand, so if you still want to add something, I will give the word to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. I've said a mouthful about that one. Since the year 2001, we started connecting with the authorities in Namibia under OTA, our Herero Tribal Authority, and then our Herero Tribal Authority have got an ambit of OGF, which is our Herero Genocide Foundation. We've been interacting with them. We are at the mercy of the Herero Tribal Authority and the OGF. Now we've got again the NTLA as well. We interact almost every second week. We interact to find a way on how are we going to be included in this in the negotiations, since everybody knows that the government is only talking on behalf of all the Namibians, which we are not included in those negotiations as the affected communities as per extermination order. The government is not talking on our behalf. They are talking for all the Namibians, of which we've got a problem with that. We say that it cannot be about us without us, and anything about us without us, it is against us. And then until they address the latter, then they are not talking to our cause. They are not talking to the genocide that happened to the Hereros and the Nama people. So our problem is that even the bilateral talks between Germany and Namibian government, they don't even mention any other people outside the borders of Namibia. And we're saying that we've got people in Togo, Cameroon, Botswana, Angola, and South Africa. In South Africa, we've got Hereros who reside in 3 provinces. We've got people in Lephalale, Limpopo province. We've got people in Mafikeng and those areas, which is Northwest province. We've got people in the Kuruman area, which is the Eastern Cape, and then we've got Hereros again in Cape Town, as far as Cape Town. There's a lot of things that the Namibian government is not addressing, or they're not mentioning to the German government. But my concern is always been that even the German government in 2007, when we invited the chief, paramount chief, Dr. Kwaima Rurako, the late paramount chief, may his soul rest in peace. The media of Germany, the German media, was here in South Africa. They had even a slot. The Namibian government, they were represented by the High Commissioner of Namibia in South Africa. But when they negotiate, talk about this genocide, they don't even mention that there is other people in South Africa. But for me, I have realized that they are doing that intentionally, because their purpose is not about genocide and reparation. Their purpose is about atrocities and reconciliation, and which we are not part of atrocities and reconciliation. We are about genocide and reparations. That's why we are with the MTLA on this matter, and the OGF and the OTA. Thank you very much. I hope that I tried to answer some of the the question there. We are not included. Namibia, they don't know about us. All of a sudden, when it comes to this negotiate bilateral talks, they don't know that there's Hereros in Namibia, there's Namas and there's Hereros in South Africa, there's Namas in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. As we're about to exceed the time limit, we will close the chat for additional questions now. However, I will still pose some of the questions that have been asked up until this point. But I kindly ask the speakers to give short answers to the questions that are being asked now. Okay, so the next question is for you, Sima. Do you think that there is any chance that the Namibian government will truly support the Nama and the Herero people going forward? Or do you think that a party change needs to happen? And what concrete strategies do you have in mind in order to overcome this issue in Namibia? How exactly can it be solved in the next few years and the next decades?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I don't think that the Namibian government really has a choice. If it will continue to ignore the calls of the Nama and the Herero people, it is going to simply show us that we are not citizens, that it does not regard us as citizens who have the right to speak for ourselves. And it is effectively going to cause ethnic division. And this is not something that we want. So government has a choice. The Namibian state has a choice. Namibian politicians have a choice. And the choice that they have is to respect the 2006 agreement or 2006 resolution that was taken by the Namibian parliament. If it does not respect that choice or that resolution that was taken by parliament, then obviously we have avenues. There are lots of avenues to assert our voices, and we will certainly assert our voices. That is what I can respond. I'm not a politician. I'm speaking for the rights of my family members. I'm speaking for my rights as a Nama person. And whichever regime is there, I urge that regime to respect my rights and to respect the rights of my predecessors and my family members, because I am a citizen of this country and I have the right to speak as a citizen of this country. That is how I can respond to that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Following up on that, another question which has been raised is that apparently the Namibian government claims that some Herero and Nama representatives participated in the negotiation process. If so, who were the Herero and Nama representatives who participated?
Yes. I'll speak on behalf of the Nama Traditional Leaders Association. The Nama Traditional Association is really an inheritance of the confederation, sovereign confederation that was founded in the 1800s, in 1868 in Wahanas. So it is the successor of that treaty. Basically, the purpose of the Nama Traditional Association is to ensure that the interests of the Nama people are considered, whatever those interests may be. If they are political interests, economic interests, social, cultural, and particularly in the case of genocide, those interests also as a people. The Nama are divided into different clans, sub-clans, and originally there were 13 clans. In today's NTLA, or Nama Traditional Leaders Association, 10 of those clans are members of the Nama Traditional Association. these traditional authorities are also legally registered entities acknowledged by the Namibian government as the legal representatives to speak on behalf of these different clans. They all fall under the umbrella of the NTLA. Now, I can assure you that none of these clans were in any way participating in the discussions between Germany and Namibia. If there were any people who claim to be Nama representatives, then certainly even the Namibian government does not recognize them as structures who are entitled legally to speak on behalf of the Nama people. So in this case, the Namibian government seems not to respect its own laws, because on the one hand, in terms of its legal framework, it is saying that we have traditional authorities through which we speak to traditional communities, but when it comes to genocide, it is not speaking to those traditional authorities that it recognizes as the legal entity through which it should speak. So in this sense, no Nama person is part of the discussion. If there is anybody, it is people that government has, for whatever reason, chosen to put there to say that they are Nama representatives. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for clarifying that.
Naja?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to just bring a little bit of clarity also on the side of the Herero people.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Yes, just a little bit context on that question. The Herero people's leadership is a little different from that of the Nama people. Pre-colonialism, every household had its own leader or the head of whatever family or clan. But as the dawn or as the genocide era approached, the Herero people were forced to unite and chose one leader, which they call the paramount chief, which a position that was democratically elected, based on meritocracy, of course, and that, of course, continued and it proceeded till date. So you have a position of which is democratically elected, sometimes nominated by the person who held the position, and so on and so forth. But what the Namibian government does, of course, is to sort of try and elevate the people that it can use to its benefit, and to sort of as a ploy to keep the people divided. So what happens is that you have clans within the Herero people who choose their own chiefs, the people who are generally the leaders of those households or those clans, and then you have the position of the paramount chief of whose which is elected by any Herero person in general. Now, what happens is that the government elevates these people. These people only represent their clansmen or their houses in general. But the government will take those people and post them as if they are actually representing the entire Herero people in general, which is not true. And that is why when we say that the majority of the Herero are led by the paramount chief, is because they had a hand in electing that paramount chief. So as somebody that leads a clan and that was elected by the people of his house cannot claim that he is leading the entire Herero nation, or cannot claim the right to represent the Herero peoples, because that person was not elected by the general public, but by the people of the house. So basically the government takes those people and poses them as if the affected communities as a whole are represented within the negotiations process, which is actually not true. And that is why I kept on referring to the current leadership of the Herero people and NTLA as led by Sima, that there is the authentic authority, the legitimized authority of the Nama and the Herero people. And then there are those clans leaders that are elevated or that are pedestaled by the government because they, of course, work with the government and are in close relations with the government. We feel oppressed, we feel excluded, we feel structurally marginalized by the Namibian government, and that is why we don't work with the Namibian government. And so these clans chiefs or these clansmen or these clans leaders are the ones that were close, so that work in close proximity with the Namibian government. And that is why the Namibian, so it was basically just a PR coup. You know, they're just placed there. And plus we all know that they did not really have much influence within the negotiations process. And that is why upon hearing the quantum, some of those chiefs even pulled out of the negotiations team of the government because they were not happy. But then they were constantly referred to as those that are representing the affected communities within the government team, which is actually a fallacy to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your explanation. I think we all appreciate it. So since we have been talking about your relationship with the Namibian government, I would now like to pose a final question regarding Germany, which has been come up in the chat. So the question is, if the German Foreign Ministry or President came to Namibia tomorrow to hail the reconciliation agreement, what would you tell him?
Yes, my answer would be very, very simple. I don't think we need a long answer on that. We would simply, just because of the nature of the agreement that he's coming to hail, we would embarrass him. We would gather en masse. We would gather all our people. And we would certainly show the German president that we are not here to play games. We are here to claim what was rightfully taken away from us, and we shall not allow anybody to deny us that right to our very legal and legitimate claims, and we shall simply embarrass him. That is the short end of the stick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sima. So I think that is a very clear comment and also a good way of ending the session today. So thank you very much to all of those who presented tonight, and thank you very much to the participants for all your interests and your questions. Next week there'll be, oh yes, Joyce, do you want to add something? Okay. Next week there'll be a follow-up event where representatives of the Herero and the Nama will talk about intergenerational trauma and sexual violence. It's on Wednesday at 7 p.m. again. So please do register via email again to join again next week, and we would be very happy to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the audience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you also.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see all of you again next week. Bye and have a lovely evening.